Welcome back. Jake Simons here. Today I come to you with a special video where I interview 7 different coaches from across the state. We've got interviews from Adam Gray, Michael Schlagenhauf, Jamie Taylor, Katie Guest, Kate Lubbers, Ryan Mitchell, and Jennifer Gray. And I actually am going to create 9 different videos exploring different topics and tips that these coaches have. Between these 7 coaches, there's 44 years of robotics coaching experience. In today's video, we're going to explore how to select students for your team. Take a listen. So how do you specifically select students?
So, my team is a little bit different than most teams in that since I'm a private organization that was really built in order to give kids who really wanted to do a lot more with robotics that maybe being at the school wasn't going to afford them. If they wanted to throw a lot more time into robotics, they could do that. The other basic, I guess, the other differentiating factor is that the the second reason that I started Pyre was because my kids also wanted to do other things. So as they were coming into middle school, they basically had to choose robotics or cross country, robotics or track, robotics or swimming, robotics or football. So um, being able to have a private organization here, uh, we could set our own practice times and we could be really, really flexible. So in terms of selecting kids, a lot of it has just come out of interest from those kids in wanting to do a lot more. So it's basically been fairly organic. I've had a few kids approach, I've had a few parents approach, and I've approached a few kids' parents as well, from a summer camp or from the school program or something. Kids that I noticed like really had a real enjoyment of not just robotics and not just the competition, but the whole process in general. So it's not really a tryout per se, but I have kept it somewhat small. And it's not like it's an exclusive thing either. Like I don't charge anything for it either. So it's just mainly built on kids that really, really want to do a lot more and really need the flexibility for the other activities that they do in school.
Yeah, since that first year that we really got competitive, starting in the summer after that, we started doing summer camps, and it was basically we do it as 3 half-day sessions. So all the kids, that are interested, it's sort of like a summer camp part, 4 hours or so. We bring them in. They have a snack part way through. We get them out by lunch. But we usually break them up 3 to 4 groups, depending on how many adults we've got. And we at least do, like stations of building and driving and programming. And we do, each team gets 1 station every day. So they hit all 3 stations. And then we progressively over the days make it harder and harder, or more advanced. And we see where the kids have strengths. Most of the time we find, hey, this person, like, they got the simple programming challenge, and we bump it up to code.org the second day, and the third day is like, here's a robot base we've built, and make it drive in a square. And if you do that, here's a maze on the floor, start doing that. And we find some kids that are great at that, and they pick up a controller and they can't even make it drive the way they want to, right? But it gives us a chance to see their strengths. We always computer wise, it's like, hey, in a lot of cases, we got 2 kids on 1 computer, and we'll make sure we divvy them up, and we get to see a lot of that collaboration. And so there's a lot of chance to get some good insight on how they're probably going to do as far as being a team member, collaborating. How do they handle conflict when it inevitably arises? The frustration, oh, I'm trying this, it's not working. And so for a very short amount of time, we're able to get a lot of information, and it really helps us find the kids that really want to be in there, as opposed to, kids that their parents think it's a good idea and they just show up.
Yeah.
We still have those occasionally, but it does help us sort through a lot, and especially when we've had a lot of interest in the past. This year has been a little bit lower, coincided with us having a smaller room. So it worked out, but typically that's how we do it, and it's worked out really well in the past.
So for IQ at the beginning of the school year, about the second week of school, I go around and talk to all the fourth and fifth grade classrooms and hand out applications. And then I go around and I catch junior high kids in one or another class that they all have, like their English class or science or whatever, to make sure I catch all the classes, give them applications. And they usually have a week to 2 weeks to fill them out and turn them in. And then once applications are turned in, I send out a Google form to all the teachers asking for recommendations. I go with last year's teachers and this year's teachers to, even though they've only had them for a couple weeks, they still have a feel for what the kid's doing in class or whatever. And then I reach out to our guidance department to check on how their grades were the year before, check on attendance, because if they're missing a lot of school, they're not putting in the time. And then I get a group together to read through the applications and choose who is getting selected based off of that.
I want to talk really quick about the application process, because that was part of the process that we used as well in Wani, and they still use today. But when it comes to the application process, the reason that we did that, and we made them, I think, like 6 pages long. I don't know how long yours are, but we made them long on purpose because we want to see, that's kind of like the first step of commitment, right? If you can spend the time and do your best on a 6-page application, then you're going to be committed in a 7, 8, 9 month robotics season. So how intensive are your applications, and what's your intention behind that?
My application is like 6 or 7 pages. It starts off with 2 pages that the parents have to fill out. And then it says at the end of that page and boldly at the top of the 3rd page, the rest of this is to be filled out by the student, because there's always a parent that wants to fill it out for their kid. And, you can tell if the kid filled it out or not. Now, there are the exceptions of like kids that have IEPs or whatever that have to have help filling things out. And as long as somebody gives me a heads up on that, I'm perfectly fine with the parent writing for the kid if the kid needs them to or whatever. But if the kid can't fill out the application, if the kid can't get it turned in on time, like I warn them, I'm like, don't wait, turn it in early. Don't wait, because you never know if you're going to be sick or whatever. So turning it in on time is a big stickler as well. Not really many exceptions made unless like the kid's out for like 3 or 4 days out sick kind of thing. But, if they can't follow through with those simple little requests, then it always boils down to there's going to be some issues later on in the season, because like you said, the season's super long.
So we start at our school with an application process, and the students fill out an application, and then we select around 25 students now to be in like our top travel teams. So they'll go to competitions. I think this year we're scaling back a little bit since I will be on maternity leave. But normally we go to a competition about once a month. So we ask for like those students, you're going to dedicate a lot of time to robotics. But the good thing at our school is that if you are not able to be selected for that, we're doing like a club level too. And that's at the very end of the year, where students still get to build a robot, and we're just going to compete with an in-house scrimmage. So it's similar to like a robotics camp. So at least we're lucky that we don't have to turn any students away. So if we don't select them for our travel team, then we're able to invite them to the club and go with that option instead. But our application really just includes like questions from the game manual, kind of just to see how dedicated the students are. So what ideas do you have as far as strategy for the game this year? A sketch of like their first thoughts on a design for their robot. What's the maximum number of points you can score? Things like that, really just to see the students that are very into it and willing to put in that time and effort to be a good asset to our team.
Yeah, so for us being an organization outside of the school, we have a real unique way of doing everything we do is outside of the school. And so we typically start our season a little bit later than most schools do, which I've learned. But it seems to work well with our organization and then those that we gather, because a lot of the kids that want to try out for our team are kids that may have already tried out for their school teams and didn't make it. Or now that this is our 2nd year doing this, they're returning from there. So last year was our first year. We were able to pull some kids that tried out from a team but didn't quite make it. But their dynamic worked really well with our team by bringing their previous experience to a brand new team. And now this year we have a lot of kids that are trying out, one, because maybe their school had 20 kids try out, but they could only take 5 kids. And then friends of those that were already returning from the team. So as far as selection, obviously we favor those that are new. They still have to go through, and we want to make sure that they are ready to commit to being a good team player. And then we do a tryout as well, where we'll kind of go through those. Now, I don't have access to seeing how these kids do in school because they're not from our school. They're from all sorts of different schools. So we really have to rely on, once we meet them and see, do we think that they're going to be a good fit for what we're doing, and those that are already on the team.
We have a very open recruiting process where I literally say to all the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, if you want an application, take one. Give them a deadline and say, this is the first test. Can you get it done on time? Right. And, every year I have a couple that say, can I give it to you Monday? And it's like, nope, this is the first test. So we give out applications. Anyone that wants to join, for the most part, gets to join. We kind of make accommodations for as many kids as are interested. Every once in a while, we have a kid that we just know isn't going to be a good fit. And we gently, explain why and say, hey, next year, if you can improve on these things before then. And usually it has to do with this classroom behavior and, what we've already seen with his or her work with other students. So, but for the most part, we let any kid that wants to be on the team and then see how it goes.
So talk about your application process then. Like, what does your application look like? How many pages? What kind of questions are you asking?
Yeah, I think we have a 3-page application where we get just kind of some basic demographic information about, grade and age, just to make sure, because we have 6th graders in our building. We just need to make sure that they're qualifying as an elementary school student. And then I just go through and say, like, what sort of things are you interested in? Why do you want to be on the robotics team? I don't know where I got the questions, who I got them from, but somebody gave me a resource where it was a lot of scenarios, like, if this thing happens, how would you respond? How would you react? So those are always good to see what the kids say. And that's really our application, is just, getting a feel for what they're expecting this to be and how they think they'll handle it.
We start out the end of August and have an informational meeting. The kids attend with their parents, and they have to attend this meeting to get their application, to take ownership and responsibility for that. After that, they have about a week and a half. The applications are due about a week after Labor Day, and it's a handwritten application by the kids with several questions. They get to watch the game video, draw a picture, some different scenarios. And it has to be filled out by them. I also will go have a conversation with their previous teachers if needed. I've also done evaluations depending on how many kids we come out with different stations.